Welcome to the Executive Forum at Purdue University's Daniels School of Business. I'm your host, Dave Randich, lecturer in the Strategic Management Department. Each episode, we invite accomplished executives and thought leaders to share their experiences, from building careers and navigating change to taking risks and shaping the future of business. Today, we welcome Mickey Swortzel, operating partner at Tack Ventures. The Midwest-based venture capital firm invests in B2B technology companies, helping other businesses operate more effectively. A two-time tech founder who successfully scaled and exited New Eagle and New Eagle Software, she now brings deep operating experience in finance, operations, and go-to-market strategies for the early-stage teams she backs as an investor, board member, and mentor. Mickey follows a practitioner's view of entrepreneurship and venture capital. She knows what it takes to build and sell a company, how investors evaluate opportunities, and how founders can create sustainable, capital-efficient growth. Join us as we connect today's students with the insights and inspiration that drive tomorrow's leaders. Mickey, thank you for taking the time to help us today with the Executive Forum.
Very happy to be here.
And so tell us about your Purdue background. You didn't go here, but you've got some connections.
I do. So like Cal said, I married a Purdue EE, and then 5 years ago our son chose Purdue as his college home. He graduated last May in chemical engineering, and that got us here as my husband is a lifelong Purdue fan. So with the mom connection, I wanted to be closer, so then that got season tickets to multiple sports, and here we are.
Good tickets?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. That's important. So you're in venture capital, and we haven't had much venture capital discussion this year. Can you just describe what VC is in simple terms for the students, and then maybe we'll dig into what your firm does?
Sure. So at its baseline, it's giving money to capital to early stage companies that have high growth potential. So while an HVAC company or a hair salon might be good businesses, they aren't venture scalable. So we're looking for something that will grow like 10 times in about 5 years.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So how do you find these places?
So a lot of work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We at Tack have, like most firms, we have a group of venture scouts that are throughout the country, and they're going to startup events, they're talking to university accelerators, trying to find really early stage companies for us, and really to find something that we might not see online, which is what our analysts do, spend a lot of time on PitchBook and just Google, right, or Claude and chat now, to find the companies that are growing, have been funded, and might need follow-on capital. And then I also developed a really robust venture network of other venture capitalists, because most times venture firms don't write the full check. So if somebody's raising $3 million, one firm doesn't write that completely. They want a team approach. It's good for the founder, it de-risks each venture firm, so we have a nice relationship with other firms across the country.
So you go out and you find a company that you think can grow 10x in 5 years, so you've identified, then what happens?
So let's back that up a minute. So we look for companies, and the volume with which we have to source companies is between 50 and 60 a week. So last year we looked at 3,500 companies. And that's important to think about, because we're looking at the Series A and B stage. So you ask what Tack...
Maybe you better tell them all of us what A and B means.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So you ask what sets Tack apart. So we are a Series A and B fund, and that means the companies we invest in have 12 or more paying customers is what we look for. And then they have revenue, usually 30 employees, and they're asking for money for largely sales and marketing. So The earlier stage companies are what we call pre-seed, so that's sort of back of the napkin idea. And then seed stage is making some progress, still trying to figure it out, may or may not have revenue. So your question was, how do we find companies? Again, that the relationships are important, as well as tools, software tools at this point.
And then once you've identified one of these companies, you are then funding them. Can you tell us about that process?
We're doing a lot of diligence. So we looked at 3,500 companies last year, and we did deep diligence on about 35. So that's anywhere from a lot of time with founders and the founding team. It's also at some point talking to their customers, talking to their other investors, and then there's the number side. But that is only one story, right? You're doing all of the financial modeling, and then really the critical thinking about what those numbers mean in relation to the relationships and the customers, what the full story is telling you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I understand the venture part, we're out looking for companies. Tell us about the capital part.
Right, so venture capital is a two-sided marketplace. We are taking investor money, and that it really comes from kind of three buckets. The professional investment side, which is pension funds and insurance funds, university endowments. It's also what we call a family office. So they sometimes look like a mini venture capital firm. There's a family that wants to put money into startup companies, and then high net worth individuals that want to diversify their portfolio away from just stocks and bonds and mutual funds, and either because they have a real passion for the startup, maybe they were entrepreneurs themselves, or they just know that there's a portfolio risk that they want to have.
Sure. And so you go out there and you scour the country and the world. You look at 3,500 companies. Maybe you find a couple. You line up your family offices, your wealth advisors, your university endowments. Can you just take us through the process? How does all that fit together and how do you wind up with a successful outcome?
So I always say the value of a venture fund is its deal flow. So I can only go to my investors when I can honestly say I'm seeing the best and the brightest in what I'm specializing in. So we don't compete with the Sequoias and A16Zs out on the West Coast. We couldn't possibly compete there. So what we've decided to focus on is really our Midwestern roots. What we've seen is that there's a lack of Series A and B growth funding here in the Midwest. So, and what we describe the Midwest is kind of St. Louis to Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, down to Nashville. So how can we help companies that are started and growing here get to that next stage and be successful? On the flip side, we looked at as doing well by our investors. We said that's too limited of geography to just focus on the Midwest. So we look for companies across the country, but we have a Midwest angle. And by that we mean we have relationships at Cummins, at P&G, Lilly, McDonald's. One of our last investments that we made was a company out of Boston that was a marketing tech company. And they carved out space on their cap table for us because we had connections to the C-suite at Procter & Gamble. So when you talk about how's the sausage made, so to speak, there's so many moving parts. There's so many unique features that each venture firm is going to bring to a founder. You need to really know yourself and what your strengths are. Like, we're all three former founders. So we talk about founder empathy and what that looks like in terms of the partnership with our companies. But that Midwestern ethos is what sets us apart.
Mm-hmm. In a typical success that you've had, How long are you involved with the company?
So we're a new firm, so we're a couple years old.
Okay.
So we're too early to talk about our success.
If you were to guess, in your industry, how long would VC?
10 years.
10 years.
10 years,
okay.
right. So that's usually, and at that point, a company will have grown, had maybe one or two more funding rounds that we would be a part of at each stage, and then they would exit. Either a strategic company in their industry would buy them, or they would IPO.
And we have a lot of students who are entrepreneurs and very interested in startups. We were just talking about some of that this morning. How does a young entrepreneur with a great idea who's got their company, they're to the A-B series, right? So they've got 12 customers or more. How do they attract VC money? And conversely, how can they repel VC money?
Have a good business is really the generic answer, right? And we really emphasize that in the day of AI, right? We see a lot of people that sprinkle what we call the AI fairy dust over a company, over an idea, and think that's fundable. And maybe 5 years ago it was, or 3 years ago it was, but today we really want to see. And what I define as a good company is you're filling white space. You're filling someone's need. Someone's willing to walk to the counter and put money down to buy what you want, what you're selling. And that isn't as simple as you think it is, right? You iterate a lot to figure that out sometimes, and that's okay. That's the earliest stages, and that's what you're supposed to do. It's hard because you want revenue. And it's easy to take revenue from a lot of different places just to get the dollars in the door. But landing on what we call product market fit is repeatable sales for the same product over and over again. That's a good venture potential business. So your question was so have a good business, and then it's the answer that you've heard in all your classes, but network. I tell people that want to get into venture capital or want to be founders, most cities that you'll live in have a startup ecosystem. Hang around those people. There's incubators, startup events, programs, community college classes, I don't care what it is. Get in the ecosystem, because as an investor or a founder, you will be better because of the opportunities and the conversations you have in those. Now, if you don't want to be venture funded, that's okay too. We actually weren't. So you're going to go slower, and you're going to go slower, and that's okay. You have to accept that.
And we have an incubator here on campus, and we've interviewed several startup CEOs, usually in the biotech space, because that's what we're pretty strong on here at Purdue, but we're also good at technology with semiconductors and the rest. So a young entrepreneur gets out of Purdue, they've got the IP lined up, they've got their 12 customers, they've got a product they're consistently selling. What might they do that repels venture capital? What mistakes do we have to avoid?
The first thing we look for is a humble founder. So if you're not humble, that's going to repel. And humble.
And how does that present itself?
Yeah, humble looks like teachable without being too flexible. You shouldn't listen to every wind that comes along and everyone that tells you how to run your business. But if you don't take any advice or any input, that's also a warning sign. So it's a fine line of being willing to listen and knowing who you are. If you can acquire those 12 customers, but if they leave you, that would repel,
yeah.
Right? We talk about stickiness. Will customers stay with you? Do they re-up your license fee next year? Do they like you repeatedly? That is attractive. And then again, venture scalable, right? You may have a great idea, but it just won't scale as quickly, even if we pumped all kinds of money into you. I literally talked to a company group of women that were selling hair care products out of their trunk. I mean, they were lovely, but that just wasn't venture scalable.
Mm-hmm. And how would you and this is interesting, how would you describe venture scalable? What is that? How do you describe, what does that look like?
Well, the metrics are 10 times growth over 5 years. So that's the standard definition. Our history tells us SaaS, technology, Purdue's good in hard tech and bio, so those metrics don't fit typically, right? Hard tech is really capital intensive, so you may not scale that quickly, but the market is large enough that you can capture a percentage of it and still have hockey stick growth.
Yeah, yeah. And coming back to your firm now, you've got your own niche within venture capital, and we described the Midwest. What else do you do that's a little unique for you?
By the fact that we're all three founders, previous founders, again, we talk about the empathy. We know that we're funding growth stage companies, so their the value we can add is customer introductions. So we work really hard to make that. I think that's, I don't want to say our secret sauce, but what we really try to be good partners to them in their growth process.
Yes, and in addition to your geography, you're in a specific segment, I believe. Could you describe that for us and why you chose that?
So we're B2B SaaS and we say that in technology that makes companies better. So as Cal introduced me, I'm a former COO, operations person. So I know the tools and systems that made my life easy as a founder, and I know the ones that made it hard. So that was one of the things that we looked for. So operational efficiency, security, either physical or cyber, and then growth tech. How can we, again, make companies grow faster, all using technology, typically that's a SaaS. And then we just know and like the business-to-business sale as opposed to business-to-consumer.
Yeah. And there's always a lot going on in the world, and there's a lot going on in the business world right now, as there always has been, but it's pretty dynamic right now. What's going on out there? What do you see in the media that makes you think, all right, I got to be steering the boat this way versus this way?
So the cliche answer is AI, but it shows up in a couple ways for us. One is in the companies we evaluate. Like I mentioned, we hear a lot of AI pixie dust, and there's not much behind it. So those are pretty easy no's. But then it's finding out where does the line where Chat or Claude's going to do this instead of, or sit on top of it, right? So that's really a challenge. And then we are committed to using the tools to make our firm better, right? So we've developed AI playbooks for our sourcing. We've developed web scraping, right? So it's staying current, because I don't think you can evaluate technology if you're not a user.
And Mickey, how does a person get to be a leader in venture capital? If I want to do that in my career, how do I get there?
So there's usually a couple paths. The pure finance path, right? Somebody who's the modeling pro, at least in the past, and worked his or her way up in an investment banking firm or consulting, or some sort of has that technical acumen to really know the numbers, but not just put together a balance sheet or a modeling framework. Understand really that critical thinking of what do the numbers tell me and how can I use these for benefit. Or my path was through entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so as we have our students, young 20-somethings, getting ready to go out in the world, Any advice you'd like to pass along to the folks?
So my path was very, and didn't take me where I thought it would go. And so one of the decisions I made coming out of college was that I wanted to get a master's degree. And I didn't know at the time the value that that would bring to me. It opened doors that I don't think would have been open to me otherwise, and gave me the credentials to let me walk through those. So everyone tells you to be a lifelong learner, and I think that's really important, but getting that framework and that degree, advanced degree, I'm a big proponent. So Purdue doesn't pay me to say that, but I believe I would consider an advanced degree. But even if you don't do that, you should be really proud of yourselves right now. And I don't think you get enough credit. So the statistics say that 35% of Americans today have a college bachelor's degree. In your world, everybody has one that you know or is working towards one. I worked for a neurosurgeon early in my career. He went through undergrad, medical school, and the Vietnam War. And the only nightmares he had were of missing an undergraduate test. Just put that in perspective.
The dream. Don't forget, you're all going to have that dream.
Yes, you will have that
Except
dream.
for you guys who go to all your tests and go to all your classes.
No, you'll still have it. And so I always tell undergrads, what you're doing is phenomenal. In 2 weeks, you're going to face a marathon in a week with finals. Please be proud of yourselves. Please understand the sacrifices and the commitments you're making. It's worth it, but it's really hard.
Mickey, thank you so much for coming to Purdue and joining us for the Executive Forum today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning into the Executive Forum. To learn more about how the Daniels School of Business is helping students and organizations shape what's next, visit us at business.purdue.edu. Until next time, keep learning, leading, and building the future of business.